welcome to our discussion on AI and automation post-COVID-19. My name is Jody Basson. I'm the founder of MasterStaff, the collaborative partner to USB Ed for online education. With me, I've got Grant Evans. Good afternoon, Grant.
Hi there, and hi to the listeners.
Okay. Grant is a specialist in business process optimization and a developer of algorithms for Forex fund trading. Grant, that's a very interesting sort of profile. Can you give us more insight into exactly what it is that entails?
Okay, so business process automation is just where I play is mostly in production, companies that produce things, and on their production lines trying to take some of the mundane tasks and make them automated, make them more efficient. When it comes to the Forex trading side, I've written an algorithm, and we have it now running live on 3 funds, 2 here and 1 in Chicago, which basically trades 24/5. It's only open 5 days a week on the Forex markets. Yeah, that's what we do.
Awesome. In addition to that, Grant, you're also faculty at USB Ed and online faculty, in fact, on the operations management program for USB Ed that is sold through MasterStaff. How have you found being online faculty?
New. So, we've always been used to giving classroom interactive people in the classroom sort of teaching. And the online was a bit of a change, I must say. It's not as easy as taking a course that you give in a class and just putting it online. There's a lot of changes in the way you interact with the people and the way you draw them into collaborate with you in a class. So it's been new to me, but I've now got it under the belt, and I think it's very valuable going forwards.
Awesome. It's good to hear that. Grant, let's jump into our discussion. AI and automation, what are the latest trends? What are we seeing?
Okay, so if I can start with just the difference between AI and automation, if you think of those big robots that you often see on car manufacturing lines that are putting cars together, that is automation. That's putting the pieces of the car together. If you add to that some sensors that the robot can actually watch the electronics going through its components, it can watch its actual mechanical parts and how they are how they're working or not working. They can start to build up, or humans will have to create the algorithm for them, but they can start to build up information as to what are the symptoms of an impending breakdown. And to add to that, they could start talking to the robots next to them and actually create knowledge that they are learning themselves. And that's where AI sort of comes in, and we talk about things like deep learning and neural networks there. But in terms of the automation that we've seen in the last couple of years, I mean, there's things like driverless cars. We know about that. Cryptocurrencies are in the world. I mean, this is all part of automation and whatnot. Warehouse robotics you'll see in places like Walmart, where you don't need somebody to actually move things around the warehouse. Your robots will go fetch it for you, including packaging, including shipping off to the right locations. Online marketplaces are quite big. Airbnb and those sort of things have popped up. Some new marketplaces that we are seeing during the virus, during COVID. We've got virtual trade fairs coming up where people who have historically been companies that obviously sell their goods in the shop can now take their goods online and show them at a trade fair and interact with people who can help them out with the logistics of actually getting that out to the clients at the end of the day. Obviously, we're seeing a hell of a boost in online conferencing software like Zoom. The stuff has just skyrocketed, and I'm constantly being invited to new talks on platforms I haven't heard of. So they're just popping up all over the show. Delivery drones, that might sound very futuristic, but I see this year, about 2 months ago, the Aviation Authority actually okayed an AI program that runs on delivery drones in South Africa The only thing is that it's still very expensive. So it's not like you're going to get your chips from the fish and chip shop down the road on an AI drone. It's going to cost too much. Recycling services. So a lot of the technology we're seeing pop up at the moment are not new. The demand has just skyrocketed. So I see in the States they've got we've got people sorting recycling into paper and plastic and whatnot. There's robots that do that now. So when the social distancing happens, is happening now. The guys there's a hell of a big demand for robots to come in and do that. And so that's happening in the States. And then the other thing we're seeing is cleaning robots in hospitals, which use ultraviolet to kill germs and just ride around the corridor cleaning up. And you can imagine how in demand. Are you still there?
Yes, I am.
What you'll see, just by the way, what you'll see, we're putting up some polls, and the polls for me is just so that I can't see you people, so you don't have to get dressed. But we're putting up polls so that we can just. Process automation is going to happen faster. Okay, so I agree with that. And a couple say it'll say the same, and some say it'll slow down. Yeah. So where were we? Where were we on the last thing there?
We were discussing the poll, and we were going through the. Sorry, and we've subsequently lost
the poll, but it's okay because the poll showed me that the belief is that automation is going to happen faster post-COVID, and this is what we're seeing as well in various places. So if I can go into the next section, which is about how has COVID fast-tracked the automation. What happened during COVID is obviously humans failed in the supply chains, and the obvious thought then would be, well, how do we come up with contingency plans to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And if you think about it, before COVID, I think a lot more people were thinking automation is bad, automation is happening too quickly. I think a lot of people are saying, I wish we had automation now so we could just get our deliveries via drones, or we could at least get food onto the shelves. So I think the demand for automation is going to change, both from a company perspective, to remain to have a plan B, to remain competitive, as well as the users, the end customer wanting a more assured supply chain in these times.
Yeah. Grant, based on that, and based on the increased demand for automation, what is the impact going to be on jobs?
We know there's going to be an impact on job, and I think a lot of people on jobs, and I think a lot of people are going to are worried that there is going to come a time where there's no jobs for anybody. Well, there can't be no jobs for anybody, otherwise who's going to buy the goods that we're producing? So jobs are going to be lost. Some jobs, or most jobs, are actually just going to change, and you need to be ready for that change. And some jobs will be created through automation. So obviously, social distancing is going to force changes in the way in the layout of workspaces. We saw quite a couple of businesses involved in sort of co-location businesses and incubators where many people come together to work in a shared environment. I think that's going to take a bit of a knock, unless they can find some way of social distancing within that environment. A lot of people are going to want to work from home. I think when the lockdown is lifted, I think it's not going to be everybody goes back to normal and goes down to the shop. I know I'm probably one of the people who's probably going to stay at home. Quite happy to do so. So I think our demand is going to have changed. What we've got in this country is a large supply of labor. Our problems are, though, that the training of that labor needs to fit the need, and I don't think we're there. And costs of wages need to be competitive, because other countries are going to be, you're talking India and China, they're going to be producing goods at low cost, high quality, and they've also got the workforce. So the kind of jobs that are probably at risk are manual jobs, anything that's repetitive jobs, jobs that are in predictive environments. Those sorts of jobs will come under strain, or at least change.
Okay. Then, based on that, AI and automation will also create new jobs. What are the future skills that are going to be required, and what are those future jobs?
Okay, so studies are showing that new jobs will be needed in infrastructure, in training, in healthcare, and obviously technology. We're not all programmers, I know that, but there will be a large demand for programmers. I think what people need to realize is that we're not talking about replacement. Somebody doesn't walk in and say, well, this computer is your replacement, thank you, you can go. It's going to be far more gradual than that, I think, in that you've got things called cobots. I like the word. I saw it yesterday for the first time. So robots that actually work alongside you, which take your menial tasks and do them for you a whole lot faster than you could, and with more accuracy. Jobs that maybe you might get that are prone to injury, human injury. Those jobs the robots can do. Ones which need maybe microscopic precision, the robots can do that for you. Other ones like doctor diagnosis is another one they're talking about, where I already know when I go to my doctor, he can pull up all my history from Discovery, and he can know my whole history. But if you can feed data in from the checkup that that the doctor just did, and the robot can actually go through huge amounts of data in the medical field and come back with a diagnosis and maybe a prescribed treatment, and that also helps the doctor. Jobs that will be created mostly in management and troubleshooting of the automation. So these things don't just happen by themselves. And my feeling on this one is that you need to get involved. If you're scared of it, I understand that it's maybe not your world, but you'll see the youngsters aren't scared of it. You need to get involved in the process of change. So don't kick against it. Rather find out or start now already working out what it is that you do that's maybe dogmatic, or what's the word, predictable, repetitive. Because if you can start to interact with the people that are bringing in the automation and be one of those catalysts for change, you create a job for yourself. They cannot automate your jobs unless they sit with you and find out what it is that you do, and so become part of the solution. When it comes to skills that are going to be coming in the future, so a lot of your technical skills, not the same technical skills are needed. So you'll find that they're mostly in programming and that sort of thing. But you're going to need social skills, interaction with people. We're not going to get away from. Not everybody wants to talk to a robot in every situation. So you're going to have social skills, emotional skills, EQ, self-control, awareness of other people's feelings, that sort of those sort of skills. And then what they call higher cognitive skills. So creativity comes in there for brainstorming. Computers are not going to think of the next, the next thing to build, the next thing to create, or to design. That's human. Critical thinking, conceptualizing ideas, that sort of thing, complex information processing. Those are the kind of things, and I'm seeing the youngsters actually coming up with that. It's almost inherent in the youngsters coming in nowadays. But getting involved, a big thing is get trained. There's a lot of training available for both online. I'm sure the USB is gearing up for online. That's University of Stellenbosch, just by the way. They are gearing up for online training. I know they partnered with MasterStart for a lot of the courses. But even the courses that we were doing in classrooms are now being shifted to online, and that's going to be the way going forward. So there are classes available. Get trained, get skilled up.
Great. I was chatting to you earlier, and we were chatting around a sort of phrase that one of my colleagues seems to use often, where he said that in years gone by, we could study for 5 years to go and work in a job for 50. And I think that speaks to your to what you've just said, that we need to constantly, there needs to be a culture of learning, both from an organizational perspective and from a individual perspective, that allows us to remain relevant within the current job market.
Yes, I agree with that. And what the one thing that's changed is that when you hire someone, don't expect loyalty. In fact, you don't work for a company for 20, 30 years anymore. The guy that's jumped around, or girl, that's jumped around between jobs, walks in with a lot of different skills, but also huge networks. So they can, whatever they don't know, they can bring in expertise from just their social and their professional networks. So that has changed a lot.
Yeah. That is true. I think the sort of topic of jumping around is one that still exists in sort of our and the older generation. And for a lot of people in younger generations, millennials and the Generation Zs, it is more about gathering different types of experience and meeting different types of and building a differentiated network, rather than a concept of actually just moving between jobs.
For sure. So maybe I should just chat about the Gen Zs, because they're going to come into the market, or they are coming into the market at the moment. So those are people 24 and younger, and then there's also Generation Alpha coming after that. But what we know about the Gen Zs is that they're the first truly completely tech generation. They came out with cell phones. They connected all the time. They know how the stuff works. They problem solve in a different way. So some of the things that I just was researching to find out, what are the attributes of Gen Z. They're going to want the tech. They expect the tech, but they also expect the human touch. So they're not purely tech. I know sometimes we look at them and we wonder, how are they actually communicating when they never see anybody and they never talk? They just push buttons on a keypad. But they do need the human touch. They do prefer it. They prefer millennial managers. So that's the generation just before, the generation which is 25 to 35 or so. So if you're inside a company and you want to know how to attract people in the Gen Z generation, they prefer the younger managers. I think there's probably a communication gap or generation gap otherwise. They do self-directed learning, so they are very good at finding things on the internet, or wherever they need to. So they can teach themselves as they go. Obviously, the problem with that is that you don't necessarily walk into a job saying, well, I've learned all these things from these websites. If you don't walk in with a certificate, then it's difficult to prove that you know these things. But that's also changing. We need to rethink how do we measure the skills that we mentioned earlier. How do we put that onto someone's CV? It's not as easy as getting an A for the subject. Work flexibility, something that we are now seeing through this lockdown. I saw yesterday they said that on average in the States, workers are putting in about 3 hours extra a day. In the UK, it's about 2 hours extra. And for myself, for the people I'm talking to, people are saying they are super efficient. They're getting through a lot of work. I know I am, while at home. So why do we need to go to work? I suppose the other side of that coin is, so what happens to teamwork if you're not really with the people, and camaraderie? So we'll have to work with that, but that's going to change. And the Gen Zs like the work flexibility. Interestingly, they're less about instant gratification. That was something that used to freak me out. I want to get a job and I want to be the CEO on my first job, and I'd like to have a big salary, please. That's more a millennial thing. And then when it comes to talking or teaching, when it comes to teaching Gen Zs, more about visuals, less about text is what they prefer.
Awesome. If any of our attendees have any questions for Grant, please post them on the chat and we will respond to them shortly. Grant, my next question is around really getting your business future fit into the forefront of AI and automation. How, in a situation where, and I know this is true for many businesses, there's been lots of talk around fourth industrial revolution, around AI, around automation, but most businesses that I see have not really pulled the trigger on it. How do they start that process? How do I get my business ready?
Oh, big question. Look, I think you can't not do it. I think you're going to be pushed there by competitive forces at the end of the day. So, because your competitors are definitely going to be automating. So the first thing is, I suppose, to identify those tasks that are inside your business that could be automated, and that's a trick in itself. But I think you want to. It's an interesting question. It's a difficult one. That one. Training is definitely something that you need to put in. So you need to get your staff trained up. You probably need to get some professionals in which will help you to understand what can be automated, what automation is about. But from there, you should be able to get going yourself, get the right people involved, get training for your staff. It's the skills, as I said, about critical thinking. From my perspective, I find that companies often think it's too expensive. Like AI sounds like something that NASA would do, and therefore you require some serious cash injection. Obviously, if you're going for robotics, that is expensive up front. I often see my students saying that it's too expensive. It's way more expensive than people. It is initially, but it goes on the balance sheet, and over time it's a lot cheaper and a lot more precise. But yeah, training is probably the biggest thing that you need to do, and training specifically in cognitive skills.
Yeah. So, look, I think it's one of those things you can't move away from. And I think the important thing, especially at an organizational level, is that companies need to develop a culture of learning. I believe that that's very important because it's actually also getting your people across the generational gaps to really understand why this is important. What, in your opinion, is, have you seen in businesses that have gotten that right? How can other businesses adopt that?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit there. To get what right?
To get the culture of learning right, because it's one thing for the company to offer the ability to learn, but how do we actually, and sort of, we spoke about, you also touched on the critical skills that people, or the new skills that people are going to have to acquire. So we spoke about emotional intelligence, we spoke about, creativity. What are the other areas that are important, and what should people be training on, and what should companies be investing in terms of training?
Yeah, so the one field which I'm fascinated with is business gamification, and so this is using game mechanics. I suppose similar to what Discovery does with the Vitality, where it's using game mechanics to get you to to give you awards for doing exercise and being healthy, but the end aim is that they got healthier people on their database. So business gamification is used quite a lot inside businesses to create an environment where people want to learn, and finding out it's not necessarily money that you need to throw at people. You can throw prestige at people, awards for learning. But then you got to be learning the right things. So the softer skills, I think they're going to be required. How that training happens, that's going to need a specialist, but you want to bring that in. So social skills and interpersonal skills, those sorts of things, especially for management, especially since you're getting Gen Zs coming online. But the cognitive, the analytical skills, that's going to require a want. And that's one thing that I've always said: you can learn absolutely anything you want. If you're worried about your job and you think you can't learn something, you can, when you want to. There is enough information online. My feeling is, even at the base level, go and learn Excel. It sounds silly, but just learn Excel just for the logic of it, and fiddle with it until you can actually create some automation. You can create some logic. There is so much to be learned from that program, which I think everybody's got. For those that do use Excel, try and get deeper into it if you really want to get your cognitive skills up. But for me, the process of actually looking at what you do, identifying those things that you do which can be automated, those are the types of things that probably will eventually be automated. So then you've got to look at the things that actually require the softer skills, the analytical skills that you do, and try and enhance those skills.
Great. I've got a question from William Foster. Williams asked, how do we handle the argument that software developed for processing information and to speed up processes is causing job losses?
Now, that's a big question. So it does. I mean, at the end of the day, the processes we are emulating or replacing, obviously, are processes being done by people. There's very little software that does things that people weren't doing before. And there is the question: what happens when everything's automated? And I see they're talking about a global base salary, which would be interesting. But there's a lot of people talking about that. Elon Musk, Mr. Virgin Active, what's his name? Richard Branson. We got Mr. Microsoft, Bill Gates, and even what's Facebook's guy?
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, so they're all saying, look, this is probably the inevitable end that we will get to if automation takes over everything. Governments will have to get involved, and there will have to be some sort of a base wage. It's a difficult and something that people are pondering at the moment. We don't have an answer to it. But at some point, we can't keep automating and replacing people, because then who's going to buy the products? Robots don't need products, so they are certainly not the markets. There is a worry that there might be a larger divide, income divide. So that's, people are working on that, but governments will have to get involved.
Awesome. Claudius posted quite a nice question, one that I find particularly interesting, in that, do you think training can be done purely online, or should face-to-face training still be conducted?
I think that also is partly the preference of the learner. I think we're going to a space where online will be by far the biggest training platform. We're also talking about instant training. So as you're going to do a task in your job, you can click a button somewhere and you get trained on the spot for the thing you're just about to do. So that sort of thing is coming. Be honest, I love being in front of a class of people. One thing I miss is to be able to see and sort of feel their reaction. I can see when they actually get a concept. I can slow down and redo a section if they didn't grasp it. But I think the reality is that online is certainly we're going to get better and better at it. And I think the one thing that we're seeing also is not so much the younger people, but the older folk who are getting onto these platforms find it difficult to interact. Not so much because they don't understand the technology, but it's foreign to chat to type into a chat box. And so we as the facilitators need to up our skills in getting classrooms to be more interactive. But yeah, I like the face-to-face, but I certainly believe we can train online only. I don't think we need face-to-face. It is something I enjoy, though.
Yeah, no, very good response. Terence has asked, why companies are bad at cost-benefit analysis prior to implementing automation. This results in implementing automation solutions in areas we don't receive the maximum benefit and the required return on investment. What can companies do better?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, it's. I suppose the automation has some effects that you might not have thought of, but those could be beneficial or not. But I can't see why companies can't do cost benefit analysis. I suppose depending on who's doing the automation. So if it's somebody who's actually doing the work for the company, there's a carrot being dangled to make it look like it's going to create more value than it should. So I don't know if that's the case, but it shouldn't be difficult to do cost benefit analysis up front. The one thing that is going to be difficult and something where I think there might be a new market is the change management, the people. How do you deal with the people having to change their jobs? It's not easy for them. And I think there's a new kind of company that will evolve, and its sole purpose is to help people transition from what they're currently doing, to get them trained, but also to get them emotionally and psychologically ready for the change. And I don't know that you can get that fallout or the potential fallout easily inside your cost benefit analysis.
Okay, yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, so that is a point that we have to remain cognizant of the fact that a lot of change management is going to be required. Even with over the last couple of weeks with the move into working from home, it is something that at the scale that it's taken place hasn't really wasn't really planned for, and had to happen in in really quick time. How do we ensure that this constant change, that we really sort of focus on our employees and ensure that they're capable of delivering the results through this constant change?
Well, difficult one. Firstly, we have to care, and we're in a capitalist society. It's a difficult one because we're chasing revenues, we're chasing profits at the end of the day, and people almost get in the way. And we've seen a lot of people come out the woodwork during this time, throwing money on the table through grants and loans and whatnot, and people just coming up with socially responsible things to do. But inside a company, it's only going to look after the people. You've got to want to look after the people. It's not that difficult. But on the other side, you are going to get pressures from companies around the world that are just driving profits. And that's not going to be easy. I mean, the government can step in, but only so much. They can raise tariffs and they can make the cheaper products less cheap so we can keep employment local. But I don't think that's a long-term answer to the question. Yeah, I mean, it's a different type of HR position that you're going to have. it's going to have to look after the training, the change. It's going to have to look at the what is going to change, who are going to change, what part of their jobs are going to be automated, what's going to be left over, how can we enhance what is left over and add to it. That's what the HR is going to have to do.
Yeah. Grant, I've got one last question before we go over our 40-minute time limit. How are we going to need to adapt change? Or how are we going to need to adapt and change our education system in schools in order to prepare for future skills in employees?
Oh, I like that one, Robin. Thanks. Look, I think schools are changing quickly as it is. I mean, if I look at the skills that my son is coming up with, and what he's being taught, I have to go and retrain just to catch up with where he is. Curriculum, or at least the level at which they need to learn is changing so fast. They know so much more than we did, and I'm now in my 50s. So, when I came out of school, I was where he is when he was at grade 8 or grade 9. But schools, possibly online. I don't know what's going to happen with schools online. I think some parents are going to be wanting to pull kids out of school. But schools are already adapting, and I see that they are putting in different programs. I mean, programming is just got the level at which the guys are programming at school. I only learned a couple of years after school. I think they are adapting, to be honest.
Awesome. Grant, we've hit the sort of end of our discussion. Any last thoughts?
Okay. Don't fear this. It is scary for some people on the job side. It is something that you just want to accept is going to happen, and get involved, get trained up, help the people next to you get trained up. It's really, I don't look, when they talk about future jobs, they are not talking about less jobs. Just by the way, we're talking about more jobs, just different jobs. So it's not like there's I don't know, a couple of million people and there's only 100,000 jobs. That's not the case at all. There will be jobs for everybody, but you need to skill yourself up with the right skill sets.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very sort of positive message to leave with everyone, and that people, it's developing that culture of learning and making sure that you remain relevant within that market and anticipate the changes that are going to happen.
For sure.
Grant, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing all your thoughts with us. Thank you to everyone for attending, and have a great weekend. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Cheers.